Hello everybody, Mr. Akins here and welcome to What's on the Comic Rack. We're taking a little trip back in time, all the way back to 1984. Now, I don't know if some of you were even born in 1984, but let me tell you, this awesome movie came out in 1984.
Ghostbusters. Hey, anybody see a ghost?
What was cool on TV back in 1984? Well, you couldn't get any cooler than this show right here. I loved the music back in 1984. This song may have departed from their hard rock style, but if you were listening to the radio back in 1984, you definitely heard this song. For comic books, and especially Marvel, 1984 was dominated by one thing and one thing only.
Secret Wars. Marvel supervillains are coming. Secret Wars. Can the Marvel superheroes stop them?
For good or for ill, 1984 saw the beginning of mass crossovers and events in comics. The books I'm going to show, some of those are going to be from Secret Wars. Some of them are going to be the titles that were running in Secret Wars, primarily showing the characters getting whisked off to the Secret Wars or what happened in the aftermath after they came back from Secret Wars. So whether I got them off the rack, got them in the mail, or got them in back bins, here are some books from my collection from 1984. This is Secret Wars #1, amazing cover by Mike Zeck and written by Jim Shooter. This was the first issue in a 12-issue limited series that brought together every major hero and villain of the Marvel Universe in a storyline created to sell action figures. To quote another YouTuber, it was 12 issues of smacking action figures together, and at the time I loved it. Kenner Toys had licensed DC Comics for action figures, and their competitor Mattel didn't want to lose any of the market share if superhero action figures took off. So they approached Jim Shooter with a licensing proposal with one demand. The company wanted a special comic publication to help launch the toy, and Secret Wars was the answer. Back in the day, I had Iron Man, Spiderman, Wolverine, Doctor Doom, and Captain America, and was really disappointed that Cap didn't have a replica shield. Instead, each figure came with a large plastic secret shield accessory that held a lenticular image. So yes, I did buy some of the action figures, but I wasn't advertising it. If I had been 12 years old when these action figures came out, I would have bought every one, probably multiple ones. But I was 15 at the time, and buying and showing off action figures at school wasn't exactly cool. By the time Secret Wars rolled around, Tony Stark had hit alcoholic rock bottom, and James Rhodes had to take over as Iron Man. In my opinion, this run, written by Danny O'Neill and drawn by Luke McDonnell, doesn't get the praise, or certainly doesn't have the market value that Demon in a Bottle does, but takes the idea of Demon in a Bottle, to me, to the next level. At the time, I didn't appreciate the story. I didn't appreciate Luke McDonnell's visual storytelling. I just wanted Tony Stark back as Iron Man, but nevertheless, I was hooked as I watched Tony sink deeper and deeper into the depths of alcoholism. Issue number 182 of Iron Man really represents a turning point for the character of Tony Stark. It shows that Iron Man's greatest enemy is not some external threat like the Mandarin or Obadiah Stane, but within himself and his own personal demons. Rhodey had some interesting moments in Secret Wars, but as I read Secret Wars, I always wanted and wondered how the story would go if Tony Stark was in the armor and not James Rhodes. With each title in 1984, the reader sees the effects of the hero's time on Battleworld, but the entire run of Secret Wars had not been released yet. This created huge hype for me to get the books and discover what happened on Battleworld. For some titles, Secret Wars had little impact, like Iron Man, but others, the 12-issue miniseries, had huge implications. With the next title, Secret Wars definitely shook up the roster of my favorite comic run of all time. It was in this issue, thing number 10, that the Fantastic Four, or at least 3 members of the Fantastic Four, were transported to Battleworld to take part in Secret Wars. Written by John Byrne, penciled by Ron Wilson, Susan Richards does not go with the rest of the team to investigate the mysterious construct in Central Park. Sue stays back because she's pregnant at the time with her and Reed's second child. Most of the issue focuses on the relationship between Alicia Masters and Ben Grimm. Ben is having doubts about their relationship, specifically his inability to provide her with a normal life. There are also flashbacks to when Ben first became the Thing. These flashbacks take place chronologically between Fantastic Four number 1 and Fantastic Four number 2. Ben Grimm is definitely in my top 10 as far as favorite characters. Marvel 2-in-1, starring the Thing, was one of my favorite titles as a kid, and Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 7 right here was a defining moment for my love of the character. You need to check out this issue sometime. So, with the Thing being my favorite Fantastic Four character, I was completely and utterly shocked when Fantastic Four number 265 came out. Fantastic Four number 265. This issue actually contains 2 stories, one entitled The House That Reed Built and Home Are the Heroes. The second story is where She-Hulk is introduced as the newest member of the Fantastic Four. When the Fantastic Four return to Earth from Secret Wars, Ben is no longer with them, and the She-Hulk has taken his place. I'm reading this panel, and like Sue, I'm asking, where is Ben? But before Johnny can answer, Sue cries out in pain as she goes into labor. The team rushes off to Mercy General Hospital, and I'm left wondering, where is Ben Grimm? Where is my favorite member of the Fantastic Four? At the time, I liked She-Hulk and was familiar with the character because of her stint in the Avengers, but come on, she's no Ben Grimm. I was disappointed and actually hyped at the same time. Disappointed that Ben was no longer with the team, but hyped to find out why. This was the beginning of John Byrne taking a character I liked in the Avengers and turning her into a character I loved in the Fantastic Four. John Byrne has said in interviews that he wanted to use the character because, unlike her cousin the Hulk, Jennifer Walters had reached a point in the character's evolution that she enjoyed her alter ego and didn't view it as a curse. This issue is definitely a character-driven story as opposed to an action-driven story. Not saying there's no action in this issue, but much of the story is dialogue, exposition, or character interaction, like relating Sue Richards' life while living in the Avengers mansion as the Avengers are trying to determine what happened to the missing heroes. In my opinion, John Byrne is at his peak in writing the Fantastic Four during this period. The story, and especially the art, is phenomenal and is put on full display in the first half of the book. The first part of the book is told entirely from the first-person perspective of the villain Trapster as he attempts to infiltrate the Baxter Building and take revenge on Reed Richards. I highly recommend picking up this book just to see how the automated defenses of the Baxter Building defeat the Trapster. The combination of both art and narrative structure takes this story to a level I feel can only be achieved when the creator is both the writer and the artist. Again, pick up this book, tell me what you think about it, especially the first half. Avengers 242 is where the Avengers were transported to Battleworld. Captain America and Thor did not get transported to Battleworld in their individual titles. In fact, Thor left the Avengers back in issue number 234, and this marks his temporary return to the team. I'm sure this was done so he could participate in Secret Wars, because Walter Simonson completely ignored Secret Wars during his run on Thor. Thor does reveal to Captain America and the Wasp that his enchantment on his hammer has been altered, thereby bringing an end to his mortal identity as Dr. Donald Blake. This enchantment has actually been transferred to Beta Ray Bill's hammer, Stormbreaker, allowing him to transform into the form he had before becoming his people's protector. The Vision has been incapacitated since Avengers number 233 and is fully restored in this issue. And at the end of the issue, Captain America, Thor, She-Hulk, Wasp, Captain Marvel, and Hawkeye pass through the Gateway Arch and are transported to Battleworld to take part in Secret Wars. Al Milgram's pencils are great and really solid in this issue, but you can definitely tell how an inker can influence the artwork. I really like this cover, but I don't like the artwork inside as much as I do this cover. In my opinion, Joe Sennon's inks always complement Al Milgram's pencils so very well, and this cover is a perfect example of that. Avengers 243. This issue has a lot going on as far as story-wise, with 2 primary implications for the future. The Vision begins experiments that will eventually connect him to every computer in the world, which will eventually lead to him becoming the White Vision. The Vision decides to create a second branch of the Avengers and appoints Hawkeye as its leader. This is the beginning of the West Coast Avengers. Once the other Avengers return, the Wasp resigns as chairman, and the Vision becomes the new chairman. Roger Stern is one of my favorite Avengers writers, and was on the Avengers for a long run. He wrote both Avengers 242 and 243, and I would describe them as stereotypical 1980s comics. So what do I mean by that? Comics during the Jim Shooter editorial period drew heavily on previous storylines, had long-running subplots, and emphasized characterization. Modern Avengers comics are nothing like this. For example, Tony Stark is a unique character, and since his popularity with the MCU, his character in comics has been influenced by Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of the character. Robert Downey Jr. has infused razor-sharp wit, rapid-fire quips, and sarcastic one-liners, making him a very distinct character.
Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
However, the last modern Avengers comic I read had every single character from Captain America to Thor with this same distinct personality trait. There was no distinction between the characters' dialogue or actions that made them unique. That is something I miss and loved about Roger Stern's run on the Avengers. Next we have Uncanny X-Men number 180, which serves as a prelude to the X-Men entering Secret Wars. Chris Claremont puts together an absolute masterclass on how to write dialogue and use dialogue to develop characters. This issue begins with Professor Xavier, who can now walk after the Brood saga, reflecting on his past as an athlete when he is suddenly struck by an unspecified psychic attack which alerts Storm. This sets up the first of many dialogue exchanges between characters in this book and highlights Claremont's amazing ability to write and use dialogue. There's some great exchanges between Storm and Xavier, Kitty Pryde and Doug Ramsey, Colossus and Wolverine, and then Storm and Kitty again at the end of the book. Combined with some amazing John Romita Jr. artwork, these scenes are used to create powerful interactions that explore personal growth, change, jealousy, and friendship. Again, a master class on how to craft powerful character-driven story filled with meaningful dialogue instead of maybe powerful punches, although there are some punches that are thrown in this issue. The issue closes with Kitty's capture by the White Queen and the X-Men being drawn into Secret Wars. If you've never read this issue, I definitely recommend picking this book up if you can. You might even find it in a dollar bin. Just look for this amazing John Romita cover. And then we come to Spider-Man. Of all the titles and heroes that participated in Secret Wars, the event had the most lasting impact on Spider-Man. Secret Wars did the unthinkable. It changed one of the most iconic costumes in comics. A design created by Steve Ditko and refined by John Romita was changed into a sleek black costume created by a fan and bought by Jim Shooter for $220. A simple costume swap at the time eventually led to the creation of Venom, and a split with Spider-Man fans as to which costume is the best. So what's your opinion? Black suit or classic suit? At the time I didn't like the black suit, but it's grown on me over the years. But the classic Spider-Man look will always be my favorite. The black suit always brings up some controversy as well, such as, is this the first appearance of the black suit in Amazing Spider-Man number 252? Or what about Marvel Age number 12? What about Amazing Heroes number 35? Do these count as first appearances? Curious what people think about that as well. Since we're getting controversial, let's talk about Secret Wars number 8. Cover by Mike Zeck, written by Jim Shooter. This comic is the origin of Spider-Man's black suit. Some people may recognize this book from a grainy video when I first started my channel. Next, we've got a 6.5 in Marvel Superhero Secret Wars. Yes, I had this book slabbed. Yes, I have taken it out of the slab. When I first started watching comic book YouTube, I was watching channels like Comic Book Investments, Reggie Collects, and I got caught up in the idea of slabbing my books. Looking back, should I have slabbed this book? No. If it's from my collection, especially from the 80s, then it's been read multiple times. And at best, any of those books are going to probably garner a grade of 7 to 5. Was it worth the experience of knowing what it's like to send something off to CGC? Yes. Will I ever slab a book again? Maybe. Especially if I have a second copy, because I do like the way the comics look in a slab on my spinner rack, but they look pretty good in a top loader as well. Will I buy a slab book? Yes. I feel when I'm buying a slab book, I'm paying another person to look at the book and tell me what they think of the book and provide me with some reassurance about what I'm buying. Slabbing books is primarily an investing mindset, and I'm not investing in these books. When I die, I have a set of instructions on what I want to happen to the things I own, and my instructions are as follows. Ask the local LCS owner what he'll give you for everything, and take his offer. And there you have it. A lot of books from my collection back in 1984. Not all of them were from 1984. I had to throw some other ones in there. I like to try to keep this to 10, but once I started putting those books out, pulling them out, thinking about what I was going to say, I had to show some of these other books that related to the books from 1984. So if you like these kind of videos where I'm talking about books from different years, check out some of these videos up here on the screen. And until next time, we'll see you around the comic rack.